Welcome back to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Reika and I am your host. Today, I am starting a new podcast mini series that I will be hosting. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. If you are a returning listener, welcome back. This podcast, Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast, was started about a year and a half ago because I wanted to interview other full-time yoga teachers from across the world and ask about their journey of how they got to be where they're at right now. Like, what are the journey it took for them to become a full-time yoga teachers, and what is it like to sustain their career as a full-time yoga teacher? So I had a lot of questions myself when I first became a yoga teacher, and I've been teaching yoga full-time for almost 10 years. And I just had a lot of questions. I wanted to learn from others who's been doing this longer than I have. I wanted to learn from others who's been doing it just as long as I have to see what are some creative ways that they made it work and what are some challenges that they overcome. And that's kind of why this podcast was born. So I hope you're enjoying all the episodes I've been producing and releasing every week, every Monday. I release a new episode. And usually it's an interview format. I interview other full-time yoga teachers, but this time I am starting a 4-part mini series of a solo podcast of me sharing and talking about a topic, which is what are some myths that exist around being a full-time yoga teacher. So that's what the topic is going to be for the next 4 episodes. I hope you enjoy it. But before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up. So first thing I want to share is that I teach a mentorship program for yoga teachers. And for this mentorship program, I bring in guest teachers to teach once a month some kind of special topic workshop that is their specialty, the guest teacher's specialty. Sometimes I teach the workshop, but I also invite guest teachers to come teach their special topic workshop. And this month, July of 2025, I have an exciting workshop that I want to share with you, the listeners. The workshop is called Yoga Meets Physical Therapy, Teaching Yoga for Healthy Aging, with teacher named AJ. AJ and I met a couple years ago, and what's so special and amazing about AJ is that AJ works as a full-time physical therapist. AJ has a doctorate in physical therapy, but AJ is also a yoga teacher. And AJ teaches for different yoga teacher trainings, the anatomy portion of the training. And if you know me, you know that I love anatomy. I love learning about physical therapy stuff. I love learning about body mechanic and all kinds of stuff that's body related. I love learning more and kind of going deep into our body, physical body, and how it functions, how it works. I'm also very fascinated about the knowledge the physical therapists have, and there's that gap that exists between yoga teachers and physical therapists. So I think this workshop is going to be amazing that AJ is coming on to teach about how to teach yoga to aging population. So in this workshop, you are going to get evidence-based tools to create your yoga classes that supports aging population if you already teach for aging population. And you're also going to learn how to empower your students and how can we adapt our yoga practices and the teachings for older adults with a guidance from physical therapists, and not just a PT, because AJ has knowledge and know what it's like to be a yoga teacher. I think AJ can really bridge the gap between the knowledge that yoga teachers tend to have about the body and what AJ is learning and practicing PT practice that they work at. So what's also amazing about this workshop is that it's sliding scale, a sliding scale of $10 to $60. So the registration link to this workshop is going to be on the show notes. So go check it out. It's $10 to $60. You can choose your own amount. It's happening on July 26th, which is Saturday, from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. It's happening live in person in Long Beach, but you can also join via Zoom if you don't live in Long Beach or near Long Beach. You can join from any time zones. And the workshop will be recorded so you can receive the recordings later if you cannot be there for that time. Another amazing little cherry on top about this workshop is that you can get 2 continuing education hours through Yoga Alliance when you join this workshop. So all the information you need about this workshop will be on the link I'm going to share on the show notes. So go check it out. And I hope you can join us. I will be there. And you know me, I'm always asking lots of questions. So come and join us for this workshop on July 26th. One more announcement I want to say is that I am teaching accessible yoga teacher training at Raw University. So Raw Yoga is one of the yoga studios I work at here in Long Beach. They have their own 200 and 300-hour teacher training programs. And over the years, I've been part of their 300-hour teacher training programs here and there. I teach a couple modules here and there. And I am back to teach accessible yoga module for this 300-hour teacher training. You don't have to be part of their 300-hour program to join this workshop. So you can still join the program even if you're not part of Raw Yoga's 300-hour teacher training. You could just want to deepen your knowledge and how to make yoga accessible in your classes that you teach or special population that you might be teaching. Or maybe you have private one-on-one opportunities and clients that you teach, and you want to learn how to adapt yoga practices to suit your clients' needs, your students' needs. So this class is for you if you want to learn more about how to make yoga accessible. And this is happening in August 10th and August 17th. So that's 2 Sundays, and it is from 2 to 6 p.m. So total of 8 hours of education, continuing education, you are going to receive 2 weekends, August 10th and 17th. It's on Sunday, 2 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and this is in person only. Like I said, you don't have to be part of RODS 300 to attend this workshop. It is for any yoga teachers who want to learn a little bit more about how to make yoga accessible. So those are the 2 announcements that I have before we get started on today's topic. I do want to say I am about to head out to Nicaragua just a couple days from today. So I am leading a yoga retreat in Nicaragua called Align with Purpose, Ethical Yoga Retreat in Nicaragua. And I am just so excited. Like all the pieces are coming together now. And now it's just all about going there and, enjoying the beautiful place that we are going to be. And I'm just excited to kind of see how the group come together. So I'm sure every person who signed up for this retreat is coming with their own intention and they have their own reason that they chose to join us. And I'm just so excited to kind of see how everything come together. So I'm very excited about that. Definitely when I come back from my leading this retreat, maybe I'll do a episode on kind of like a recap of what happened, because it's not a regular yoga retreat. We're obviously going to Nicaragua. We're going to be by the beach. We're going to stay at this beautiful place. We are going to practice yoga every morning and, yin and restorative practice in the evening. There'll be some activities along the way. But what's so special to me about this retreat is that it's called Ethical Yoga Retreat. And the reason why is because we are partnering and collaborating with 2 local nonprofit organizations on site in that little local rural town in Nicaragua. And we'll be volunteering our times with these organizations, as well as the money that people paid to come to this retreat. Certain amount is going directly to donation to these organizations. So I wanted to create a retreat that had a little more depth than a typical yoga retreat that might be out there, and a little bit more meaningful and a little bit more mindful and conscious in the way we show up to another country as a guest. So I'm very excited for this retreat and hope to do another one next year. So if you couldn't make it this year, maybe you can make it next year with us. So that is it from my little check-in / announcements. Let's get started on today's topic. So like I said earlier, this episode is the first of 4 mini episodes that I am solo podcasting, releasing. And it's all about the myth that exists out there about full-time yoga teacher. So I asked this question on my Instagram stories to see what are some myths that you have heard of or maybe experienced, or this is the myth you had about being a full-time yoga teacher before you became a yoga teacher, and also my own experience. So I broke it up to 4 series. So I'm going to tell you what each one is going to be about. So the first myth that I'm going to kind of explain and bust in this episode is yoga teaching is not a stressful job. Oh, you must have such a nice, relaxing job to be a full-time yoga teacher. So that's a myth that we're going to talk about today in today's episode, but I do want to share about the rest of the series. So the next myth for next week's episode that we're going to talk about is that teaching yoga is not a real job, quote unquote real job. I have heard that many times, and that's something that I want to talk about in the next episode. And then the third myth that I'm going to talk about and bust is that you have to be either flexible or fit or thin or young to be a yoga teacher. So that's a third episode. And for the last episode, we are going to talk about how yoga teachers are expected to wear so many hats. Like sometimes students might consider us as a entertainer or doctor, therapist, physical therapist, or maybe their friend, their mother, or spiritual guru. So that's the last myth that we're going to talk about. So that's total 4 episodes. That's going to be coming up in the next 4 weeks. But let's get started on today's topic, which is myth number 1, that teaching yoga is not a stressful job. Oh, that must be nice to be a yoga teacher. You must be always Zen and chill. So that's the myth. So it's not always peaceful, Zen, and unstressful to be a yoga teacher. And I think all of you who have taught yoga before probably are nodding their head right now, because that is expectation that people have of us, that we are kind of like have it all together. We don't get mad, we don't get upset, we never get anxious, we don't get depressed, but that is actually not true. Teaching yoga can be very, very stressful. I'm not saying it's always is and all yoga teachers are stressed out. I'm not saying that. But it can be quite a stressful job. I've experienced being stressed out as being a yoga teacher. It can also be emotionally and energetically demanding to show up, to hold space for others. It's not an easy task, especially if you yourself is going through a challenging time in your personal life, or sometimes the world, right? The world is crazy sometimes. There's so much happening in the world, and there's also so much tragic and pain and suffering that's happening in the world. To still show up for others, for a group of your students, to show up to teach a yoga class privately or publicly in a group class, it's not an easy task. And I think many yoga teachers become yoga teacher because they actually are struggling with something in their lives, and yoga has helped them so much with whatever they were struggling. And then that's why they become a yoga teacher, because they realize that they want to share this beautiful teachings with others because it has helped you so much. And that's to say that yoga teachers are human. We also do go through challenging things. We also have anger, jealousy, sadness, all these emotions we experience too. And we also go through time that it can be hard to show up to teach and to show up as a balanced, Zen, peaceful yoga teacher that maybe a lot of people expect us to show up as. So we are all human. We are constantly working towards balance, but it doesn't mean we're always balanced. And I think everybody can relate that. And we're also not perfect. We're always are a work in progress, always, like anyone else out there. And I think some people might think being a yoga teacher is just a stress-free life. And that's not true. Like I said earlier, especially if you're teaching yoga full time and you're relying on this teaching yoga as your income, it can be very stressful because maybe you're teaching 20, 30 classes a week and you're going from one studio to the next. You're sitting in traffic to get from one place to the next. You're always eating your lunch in the car in between two classes. You're always trying to reply to emails and respond to DMs between two classes. And you have other people who might be relying on you. And you're also trying to make enough money to live and go from one place to the next. It's not an easy, stress-free life for sure. And that is why burnout is common in yoga teachers. I'm sure it's common in other profession as well, especially I would imagine social workers or therapists, nurses, doctors, people who work in the profession of taking care of others, showing up for others. I think including yoga teachers it's emotionally draining. And that is why burnout is common in yoga teachers and being a full-time yoga teachers. So I think it's so important to have some boundaries as a yoga teacher so that you don't get to that point of burnout. And that's some of the questions I ask quite a bit in my interviews with other yoga teachers, other people's experience of burnout during teaching, and also what are some boundaries or self-care tools that they have set for themselves so that they don't get burnt out again. So here are some things I want to share with you that I have heard other teachers say from all the interviews I have done on my podcast, as well as something that it has worked for me to prevent burning out and some healthy boundaries that you can make as a yoga teacher. First thing I want to say is making sure you have a day off per week. And some teachers say how important it is to have 2 consecutive days off per week that you're not teaching. And I am not a great example of this. I teach a lot, and the days I'm not teaching or the time that I'm not teaching, I tend to be working on my computer on my business, my yoga teaching business, or I'm editing podcasts or interviewing for my podcast or working on my mentorship program, working on my online yoga studio. So even if I'm not physically teaching a class, I feel like there's a lot of work to be done. And I don't have 2 consecutive days off personally, but I would love that. And I think that can be such a great boundary to set for yourself, to have 2 consecutive days off. That would be amazing. And I think that is one great tip that multiple of teachers that I interviewed have shared with me. And also important to schedule a time in your own schedule to have your own practice. Like I for sure try my very, very best. It's already blocked out in my schedule to practice with my teacher. My teacher's Annie Carpenter, twice a week. She teaches an online Zoom class, and it's on my weekly schedule to take those classes and practice with my teacher. And I make sure not to put anything in. I don't put anything in during that time. I stop it. My very, very best not to work. I don't take sub during those time. If I get class offered during that time, I usually will say no because it's so important for me to practice with my teacher twice a week. I mean, if I could, I would like to practice with my teacher every day of the week. But that doesn't work that way. But twice a week is, for sure, I schedule that out. That is my practice with my teacher. And you can do the same thing with your own practice at home. If you have a home practice, you can schedule that in so nothing else gets booked during those times, or accidentally don't take a sub opportunities during that time. So just having some set time per week that you block out for your own practice. Another great tip that I've heard on my interview is that have some kind of hobby that you enjoy doing that is not yoga related, or have friends that you hang out with and see that is not yoga related friends or yoga teacher friends. I think that's so important to be able to kind of turn off your yoga teacher brain or yoga student brain and be able to go do something that you enjoy. And for the longest time, I did not have a hobby outside of yoga. Like all I did was study yoga, practice yoga, teach yoga, take trainings in yoga, go take workshop in yoga. I love to travel, so I always make time to go travel a few times a year. And yeah, that didn't have anything to do with yoga. I just wanted to go travel or backpacking. But it wasn't anything regular that I had that I was doing that was not yoga related until recently. I started training for a marathon last year, and now I'm decided to continue running for fun and because I enjoy it. I love trail running in nature, in the mountains, being outside. And now this is giving me a lot of motivation to go out camping more and go try different trails that I haven't been to. As well as I am scheduling out time in my schedule that I go running in trails. I sign up for races. So I have something that is not yoga that I am committed to. I have a discipline to, and I am practicing and moving towards and pushing myself towards another goal that has nothing to do with yoga. And that's been really rewarding for me. And for the longest time, maybe first 8, 9 years of my teaching yoga full time, I didn't really have that. So I think that's been really healthy for me. Plus, I love going to the gym to lift weights so that I can stay strong and injury free when I'm running and practicing yoga and teaching yoga. So, going to the gym, lifting weights, going running outside in nature, those things have been such a blessing in my life to have something outside of yoga that I love to do and I can get into. So I think having something like that would be great so that you don't burn out. And also maybe another boundary in your schedule that you don't book something those times because those are the times that you do that whatever hobby that you love to do. Taking time off is another one that I recommend. Taking time off, like maybe you go on a vacation, like a weekend vacation or a week-long vacation, go travel to another state, another location, another country once a year or a couple times a year. I think that's another great way to reset. Even before I had running as my hobby, I always prioritized traveling. I always made sure I went on a trip once, twice a year, sometimes even more. I love traveling. Traveling has been part of my life since I was little. I grew up and lived and worked in multiple countries and different cultures growing up. So that's just like something that is very important to me to continue traveling when I can. And I know that comes with some privilege and I acknowledge that. But if that is something, for me that's important, taking some time off where I just took a week off, let's say went to Mexico. I didn't teach for 1 week. And that gives me a new, like a fresh inspiration and motivation and this like excitement to come back to teach again. Because if you teach, let's say 20, 30 classes a week, and you do that nonstop week after week after week, that can become tiring. It's a recipe for burnout. Plus, you might start getting stagnant in the way you teach. Maybe there's no spark anymore. But when I found it when I went on a week-long trip, or it could be a long weekend, or maybe a couple of weeks, and I didn't teach, or I taught very minimally. Maybe I taught a little bit online while I'm traveling. But then I come back much more like refreshed. My cup is full, my energy is recharged, and I feel excited again to teach. So that's another tip, as well as going to take training workshop from teachers that you admire, that you like, or a topic that really excites you. Take some time off and go take that training and learn something new. And that can be another way to make things a little bit more fresh. And you come back from the training inspired and ready to teach again, ready to share what you learned. And that's another way to stay fresh and stay motivated, inspired. And that helps with not hitting the burnout as a full-time yoga teacher. And since I am an introvert, I know I need alone time. It's tiring and draining for me to be in front of a big group of people or really dedicate my attention energy into small group or even private yoga if I did that all the time. Knowing that about myself, I know that, after I teach 3-4 classes back to back, I'm going to need some time alone for a couple of hours if I can, to kind of recoup and refill my own cup. And sometimes just being alone in my apartment and being on my computer, working on like back end business stuff, or talking on the phone with my friends or family, or just chilling and just being lazy at home, that can be another way for me to kind of refill my cup so I'm not burnt out and so that I can feel the best version of me as a teacher to continue to show up for my students and kind of give my full attention and energy. So for me, that is important. But if you're not an introvert, maybe you need to go hang out with your friends to kind of refill your cup up in between busy schedule that you have. So different ways to do it. So I think it's important to know what is it that you need to refill your own cup if you're teaching a lot of classes and you feel like you're hitting burnout. And I talked a little bit already about how important it is to continue learning. So taking trainings, read about it, go take a training workshop, go listen to a lecture, read a book, watch a YouTube on something that you want to learn about that's yoga related. So when I am inspired, when I keep learning, I don't feel stagnant in my teaching and myself as a yoga teacher and yoga student. And that helps me not get stuck in this like dump, almost like this uninspired, unmotivated place that definitely will lead to burnout, especially if I'm teaching a lot. So those are the things: training, workshop, continue learning, reading. Those are another way you can kind of keep yourself fresh and inspired, motivated, so you don't burn out. Another thing that I hear a lot from yoga teachers that they do to keep themselves healthy and avoid burnout is some of the self-care practices. Maybe you get a monthly massage, or maybe you go get your facial, or maybe you hang out with your friends. Alone time, make sure you get enough sleep. Maybe you see your therapist once a week or every other week. So different ways to do self-care work. Everybody's different, but some kind of way that you're refilling your cup. So I ended up talking a lot about burnout and examples of some things you could do to avoid hitting that burnout spot. But to wrap it up, this episode was all about busting the myth that being a yoga teacher is not a stressful job. In reality, it can be stressful, and showing up for others can be draining, and how important it is for yoga teachers to continue to take care of themselves. And I gave you a lot of tips on that so you don't burn out, so you can keep refilling your own cup, so you can keep showing up as the best teacher that you can be. And I talked about different ways that why teaching yoga is not necessarily always peace and Zen, can be a really challenging and stressful job. So that's the first myth I wanted to bust in this short mini series. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the myth of teaching yoga is not a quote unquote real job. So that'll be the topic for next week. Otherwise, that is it from me today. If you enjoyed this episode, or if you enjoy this podcast, I would love it if you could leave me a 5-star or like or subscribe or review or whatever you can do from whatever platform you're listening from. And most importantly, what I would appreciate the most is if you could share this podcast with someone that you know who might appreciate or benefit from this podcast episode or this podcast as a whole. That would mean a lot to me. And you can always reach out to me. I am most active on Instagram. My handle is @Reika Yoga. And my website, if you're not on social media, my website is www.reikayoga.com. And you can subscribe to my newsletter. I try to send out newsletter every other week on full moon and on new moon with little updates about my life or some inspirations that I want to share with you. something that's upcoming that I would love to share with my community, and sometime a free class that I share from my online yoga studio that you can practice. And another little thing that I do is I talk a little bit about the energy of the new moon or full moon that I send out the newsletter on, with a little journal prompts, some reflection questions that you can ponder upon or journal about to kind of stay connected to the full or new moon energy for that week. So that's what my twice a month newsletter is like, and I would love for you to join my newsletter community. So in that case, if you go to my website, you will be able to sign up for my newsletter. So that's it from me today, and I will speak to you next week on the second myth about being a full-time yoga teacher.